SOTI is continuing to grow and soar to new heights. Recently, we celebrated the opening of our new state-of-the-art global headquarters in Mississauga, Canada. To mark the occasion, SOTI's president and CEO, Carl Rodriguez, made a commemorative speech. Watch this video to hear the inside stories on how he built SOTI, our journey from 1 to over 2,000 employees worldwide, and key events that have shaped us as a company. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay posted on the latest news from inside SOTI.
Are you ready? SOTI's global headquarters is officially open.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, get ready to feel the thunder. Please put your hands together for the host of today's inauguration celebration, Director of Global Campaigns and Events, Ryan Sequeira!
Woo! Thunder! Come on, sing along with me, sing along. Thunder! There we go, sing along, sing along. Okay, last one, make it count, make it count. Thunder! Here we go. Come on, bring it. Feel that electricity. Feel that thunder. Yeah, now this side of the room, are you ready? This side, you gotta be better on this side. Go, last but not least. Go. Now everyone together, let's do the chorus. Thunderstruck. You ready? Okay, you ready? New bid. Yeah, here we go. Good morning. How's everyone doing today? There we go. You know it's a good day when you see Oktoberfest Oscar coming out over there, I gotta say. There we go. As you heard, my name is Ryan Sequeira, and I'll be your host for this inauguration. Before we begin, one little housekeeping item. If I can have everyone here in the audience go ahead and take out your cell phone. Yes, I know we're a tech company. We gotta see the latest and greatest, right? Everyone take out your cell phone. Perfect. Please go ahead, flip it to the silent mode, and that includes any smartwatches, devices that may make noise, so we can have a distraction-free event. So I'll give you a few moments to go ahead and do that. Perfect, thank you so much for doing that. It's a big day for us here at SOTI. A very warm welcome to our employees here to our global headquarters. Yeah, there we go. And a very warm welcome to our special invited guests joining us here today. Yeah. It dawned on me during the ribbon cutting ceremony, it's incredible that we all fit under one roof now. I mean, just last year, we were spread over 3 separate buildings. Now, to speak to how we got to where we are today, I'd like to call on the person that started it all. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together and welcome our president and CEO, Carl Rodriguez.
Morning. How's everyone doing? Yeah? Thunder! Okay. First of all, I'd like to start with a special welcome to our honored guests who've taken time out to join us today. Thank you for that. Also, a special thanks to our employees for taking the time out to show up to work today. So we're here to celebrate our inauguration. You know, at SOTI we talk about a lot of things. We talk about our revenue, our what we do in the quarter, our products. But something we actually don't do very often is talk about our history. So I'm going to do something a little different today. I'm going to talk about our history, and how we got here. So now this picture, pretty good looking guy, right? So this picture is actually not from the basement. We actually don't have a shot from the basement. I never thought, we'd get to where we are, so I never bothered taking a picture. But this picture is taken a few years earlier when I was working for another company. And around that time, I got an opportunity to take a contract at Nortel. I don't know if anybody remembers Nortel. But around that time, I got a contract. And Nortel, if you worked for them as a consultant, you needed to have a company. Of course, I didn't have a company. So I remember one day I'm driving, and I've made this appointment with the accountant and our lawyer. And on the way, I had to think of a company name. And I was thinking, what could I call this company? I thought, what am I doing? Software. I'm going to be writing software for Nortel. So I'll put that name in there, software. And at that time, object-oriented technology was a big thing. Languages like C++ and those sort of things were getting popular. So I thought, soft objects, software objects, soft object, and I'm going to be creating technology of Soft Object Technologies, Inc. So that was our original name, but it was kind of a long-winded name. And at some point, I had to register a domain. And so Soft Object Technology was too long for a domain, so I registered soti.net. Now, what happened is, as we started to produce products, I'd be on some forum, and there'd be someone saying, I'm using this great product from Soft Object, and people saying, I use a similar product, but it's way better than that. It's from this company called Soti. And there's like an argument about which product is better and stuff like that. And they're talking about the same thing. They're talking about our product. So I said, okay, let's simplify this whole thing. And so I just renamed the company to be Soti. So that's how, Soti today, Soti Inc., Soti, the website Soti as well. So around this time, one of my contracts ended. The contract ended, and I was interested in these early devices. They didn't have the cell phone in it yet, but I could see that's going to happen. I thought, when this happens, this stuff's going to be really cool. And I was excited. So I said, I'm not going to find another contract. I'm going to go down to the basement, and I'm going to see what I can do. I didn't really have a plan, so I just went down to the basement, and I said, I'm going to see what happens, right? And honestly, I got a lot of flack from a lot of people. They're like, Carl, you're married now. I had a 1-year-old son. You got a kid, and you're quitting your job. You're becoming a bum. Like, is this a hippie moment? Like, what's going on with you, right? And they'd say, like, what are you going to do? I said, I don't know. I'm just going to go to the basement. So the fact that I didn't have a clear plan was just making it worse. And then I remember every morning I'd come downstairs, and my mother-in-law stayed with us at that time. So I'd get in the morning, and then in the evening I'd come out of the basement. I'd get in the evening. So it was a weird time. But maybe the one person who kind of didn't give me so much flack was my wife, because she would say, well, why don't you give it a shot? See what happens. What do you got to lose? So okay, so there I was in the basement, not knowing what the heck I was going to do. And so one day, at that time, the way you bought software in those days, there was a website. The App Store was not invented yet, right? There's a website, and it was called Hendango. And that's where all the software sales for mobile happened from. So I went up in Hendango, and I found this cool app, and it allowed me to store my passwords and those sort of things on my device. So I don't know, I bought it. I know it cost me $1 or $2 or $4, I don't know, whatever. So I downloaded it, and I installed it on this device. And what it allowed me to store all my passwords and things. So I went in there, and I started punching in my driver's license, all the passwords for all the websites, password number, social security. And it took me a long time, because these early devices, the way you got stuff in, you had this little stylus. So if I wanted to type in Carl, on the soft keyboard, I'd go C-A-R-L. So imagine, it took me a long time. So I spent like 3 or 4 hours doing this, and it was late at night, so I finished like about 3:30 in the morning, and I was quite pleased with myself. I could look up all my stuff. I said, this is great. And I just, put it on my desk, and I went to bed. And I woke up the next morning, I went downstairs, and I looked on my device, and all my data was gone. I was super irritated. I was like, oh man, I'm going to spend 4 hours again. The problem was these early devices, they actually didn't have stable storage. They didn't have a hard disk, and they didn't have flash memory. So you had to keep it charged all the time, right? And if the battery died, you'd lose all your data. So I was like really irritated. Like I was like, oh God, like I'm not going to do that again. But that actually got my brain thinking. I thought, what if I could connect my keyboard to this device? Then I could use 10 fingers, it should be at least 10 times faster. What if I could bring the screen off the device onto my PC, and then I could see the screen and I could type, and that'd be much better. And that was the genesis of the original idea where I built a remote control for these early Pocket PC devices. And in 2001, I released our first product. It was a consumer product. It did really well. It went in and out of the #1 best-selling product in the world a few times. And but I was interested in what people were doing with this product. So whenever I got a sale in Handago, they'd send me an email, and there was 2 important pieces of information in that email: the phone number of the person who bought it and the email address of the person who bought it. So I would always try to call the person, if I got him on the phone. If I didn't get him on the phone, I would send him an email, and I'd ask them, what are you doing with the product? What's your experience? Do you like it? Why do you like it? What don't you like? What features would you like me to add? And this was literally gold, right? And because that's how I got in all these cool features that made this a good product. But what I started to realize also was there was a gap in the market. Enterprises start to use this product because they had these early mobile field forces, and they needed to troubleshoot what is happening on these remote devices. They're like, Carl, I'm using your product, and it allows me to see what my field force people have to troubleshoot this problem. I can fix it. I can watch what they're doing. But you need to make an enterprise version of this product. I should be able to see all my devices. I should be able to select a device, and I should be able to remote control it. It's not really geared. I'm using this because I don't have anything better. So that actually got me thinking about our second product, Pocket Controller Enterprise. So this was our first step into the enterprise market. So in 2002, we released Pocket Controller Enterprise. That product also did really well, won a number of awards. And if you look on the top here, you can see the devices there. So I could click on the devices, and I could remote control. So here I have a number of remote control sessions running. But okay, so product got out there, did really well as well. But again, I kept calling, and trying to find out. And as much as I thought I'd solved the problem, I realized customers wanted more. They wanted a way to push software into these devices to do this many-to-one thing, right? You set a policy and it'll target all their devices or a subset, and that became the genesis of the idea for Mobi Control. So around that time, this company Handago, where all our sales happened, they would invite the top software developers to a big conference in Texas. So there I was in Texas, and I was talking to these other, the top sellers and all on the Handago website. And I was sitting at this table one day, and I was looking with these top developers, and I said, there's a product out there called Wavelink Avalanche. So that was the only product that did full MDM or management of mobile devices at this time. And they knew who that company was. And I said, there's this company out there. I want to build an MDM product, and kind of like that Wavelink Avalanche product, right? And they said, oh, I know that company, Wavelink. Like, that's a really big tech company, and there's some really smart engineers there. And they looked at me and like, you're just one guy, right? And I said, yeah. And I guess they also sized me up that I wasn't a very smart engineer, so I gave off that vibe. So they were like, yeah, right, you know. So, but anyhow, I went home and we started to build Moby Control. Now, around this time, we ran out of space in the basement. There was like, it's like 4 or 5 of us in that little basement office, and you know, a bunch of guys, and it would get really hot. The air conditioning never used to work really well, so we had a bunch of really sweaty guys in the basement, and we had all these computers running, and it was generating a lot of heat. So, and then of course we were all hot-headed a little bit, a lot of passionate discussions. So all that heat we needed to get out of the basement. So around that time we bought this little strip mall office, right? So this is our first office. And there's lots of funny stories about this office. So Oscar Rambaldini, who's our VP of product management now. Where's Oscar? There he is. Yeah. So when Oscar started and he came there on his first day, he always has the story. He didn't know if he was going to going to work for a tech company or he was going to jail because it had all these bars on the windows. And when Oscar joined, we had this kind of back room. It was a big room, you know, okay, big. It's about 1/6 of this hall, right? And that's where all the developers kind of worked, right? You know, and so when Oscar joined and David Tang, who's also one of our other senior developers, is still here. Is David here, by the way? No? He's in the other room. Okay, so anyhow, so these 2 guys came and we had run out of room in the back. And so we had this little boardroom, a really fancy boardroom. It's about 6 by 8 feet. And it was about big enough for a little kitchen table. Anyhow, so we moved the table against the wall, and that became where Oscar and David Tang sat. Now, these guys were always complaining, right? And you know, and we kind of thought, okay, they're just the complainers, right? But the problem was that whenever someone went into the little kitchen behind the room and they boiled water and turned the microwave on at the same time, it would blow the fuse, and they would lose all their data on their computer, right? And I would just say to Oscar, just save more often, man. But anyhow, so these guys were always whining, and but we had another guy still working with us, still working here, Ajit here, you know, I don't know, he's maybe in the lunchroom, okay. So Ajit suddenly stood up one day, he goes, "Hey, I'm an engineer from India." So I said, okay. He says, yeah, I studied this in school. This is like a 3, he went to the fuse box and all where that's, this is a 3-phase power. Like, I know how to fix this. And I said, Ajit, but they're not going to let us turn off the master power in this building. The management is really fussy. He goes, hey, in India, we never turn the power off. So I said, okay. And I said, but Ajit, like this is in the back of the office. There's no light. Like if we'll have to do this in the dark. No problem. So if you can imagine the scene, me and Ajit's like got his head right in the fuse box, and I'm like standing a little further back, and I got the flashlight, and Ajit's like, come closer. And I'm like, no. I mean, because I was thinking like, why sacrifice 2 people, right? So, anyhow, so Ajit fixed the problem, and then Oscar and Dave, you know, we realized they weren't really complainers. They had a legit case. So anyhow, we kept developing Moby Control. And in 2004, released what today is our flagship product, SOTI Moby Control. It's that early website. You can see it's going to be released in December 6th. So the product got out there, and it really started to get a lot of traction of not only in Canada, really pretty much around the world, right? So one of the first guys, the first big customer actually we had was a company called Mission Foods. They were based somewhere in the US, I forget which place. But there's this guy, his name was Don Kent. And I had to do whatever the heck I had to do in those days. We had to all wear many hats, right? And so Don Kent one day calls, and I'm making the sale. And then eventually I've made the sale, he's ready to buy, and then he says, Carl, wait a sec. I said, what? I was like scared. What the hell is the sale? Am I going to blow the sale? He says, you do have 24/7 support, right? And I'm like, of course, Don. we do have 24/7 support. And he goes, well, how much does it cost? And I quickly made up a price. He goes, that's a lot of money, Carl. And I said, Don, our 24/7 support is the best in the industry. So he says, okay, fine, whatever. So he bought, and let me tell you the way 24/7 support worked in those days. So I'd go home and I had my little feature phone, and I'd keep it beside my bed. And Don, they had these truck drivers who were picking up the food in the morning and delivering it, all their products. So Don never liked to do his work during daylight hours. He always worked at night because he wanted in the morning when the truck drivers come, the device is perfectly working. So around 12 midnight, when he had to do some changes, he'd start 12 midnight. And then, every few weeks, I'd be sleeping, and then my feature phone rings at like 3 in the morning. And, I would wait a few seconds till my wife stopped cursing. And then, and then I try to straighten out, my voice, get it, it's just not that sleepy voice. And then I pick it up, and I'll say, hello, Sody speaking. I said, oh, it's you, Don. Oh, okay. And he goes, Carl, you work the night shift? And I said, yeah, sometimes I work the night shift. And I said, and he says, yeah, I'm having a problem. I said, Don, just a second, I'm just with another customer. Can I just call you back in a few minutes? And he said, yeah, sure. And I run downstairs, I jump in the car, flying down on Dundas towards the office, get into our little, jail cell office, turn the lights on, get to my desk, and then I called Don and said, yeah, I finished up with the other customer, Don, so how can I help you? And then me and Don would be working, and then sometimes quite often we'd whatever it is, I would solve the problem, but sometimes I couldn't solve the problem. And then I had to, another one of our senior developers still working, Jeff Lee, I'd have to call Jeff. And I'd call Jeff, and I'd say, as soon as the ring, Carl, it's Don again, right? And I said, yeah, it's Don. So he says, okay, I'll be there in 20 minutes. So then Jeff would get out of bed, Jeff would come, and me and Jeff would be working in the middle of the night, sorting out the problem. And most often, by the time, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, we'd get this problem solved. We'd upload, our server again, our deployment server. Don would download it, he'd get it working, and then his guys in the morning would be able to do their work. So that's, this is the kind of stuff we had to do in those early days. And there's many such stories, but, everybody chipped in. So these guys who have been working here a while, they'll be able to talk about this. Like if you look at this picture here, if you look at this guy on the left here, that's David Tang, one of our senior developers. Did you guys know David was a kick-ass sales guy? Yeah, so David, this was an early trade show. This was ICOM conference. This was held at the Royal York Hotel in downtown Toronto. There's lots of interesting stories here too. So at that time in our rugged mobile space, the two top manufacturers in the world, one of them was Symbol Technologies. So Symbol Technologies eventually got bought by Zebra, so it's Zebra. And the other one was Intermic, and Intermic got bought by Honeywell. Anyhow, so back then, Symbol and Intermic were the number 1 and 2 big dogs around the world in rugged mobile. And this is the Intermic worldwide conference. It's a big deal for them. They invite all their customers, partners to their conferences. It was held in Toronto. And they gave us a call and they said, Sody, we like your Mobi Control product. In our keynote, we want to actually say something about you guys. Do you guys have a video or something? Our CEO will be up on stage. And right around that time, we actually made our first video. And it was, we didn't really have much money. So it's quite a lot of money for us. We'd hired a video company, and I don't know what we paid, $5,000 or something like $6,000. And we just made a video, but we'd made the video with the then #1 device in the world. The manufacturer was Symbol Technologies, right? And so we said, yeah, we have a video. And then I thought, what am I going to do with it? I can't show the competitor's video in Intermix keynote. They would get really upset, right? So I thought I had this not so very good idea, which, Oscar did warn me it wasn't going to work. But anyhow, I sometimes don't always listen to good advice. So I called the video. I said, can you guys, there's a couple of shots where you could see the device head on, right? I said, whenever that comes up, can you just color the buttons differently, right? Convert this to a red button and this to a green button, so it'll look like a different, I thought that's gonna work, right? So anyhow, so they did that, and we gave the video to the Intermix marketing lady, and she said she's supposed to vet it, right? Anyhow, so we gave it to her, and we completely forgot about it. We show up at the show, they gave us a booth right outside the keynote. We were the first company outside in the hallway. The keynote starts, big crowd, hall is packed. CEO gets up on stage and he goes, welcome everybody. And then he says, I'm going to start by playing a video from one of our key partners, Sodi. They're based here in Canada. And he rolls the video. And the video plays, and everyone in the audience recognizes that that's the Symbol device, their #1 competitor in the world. And there's a buzz in the audience. And the CEO, you could see him changing different shades of red, right? So anyhow, that guy, he stormed out of there at the end of it, and he just walked right by us. He wouldn't look at us. He came up and down the aisle to different sessions a bunch of times. He didn't talk to us, and the marketing lady, she told us, at the end of this show, I'm going to get fired because you guys. And we were like, we thought we checked the video, right? But she didn't check the video. So we thought that was a really bad moment, but that actually turned out to be, one of the most brilliant marketing things we had actually done in the history of Sodi, because no one knew who the heck we were, and we'd be like at some trade show in, I don't know, somewhere like in Florida or something like that, and people say, Sodi, you're the video guys, right? And we, yeah. But in the process, because they all knew who we are, all these people went and told that story, they started to look who Sodi was, and they'd find our products. So a brilliant marketing strategy, right? So not all marketing strategies are planned. That's the moral of this story. By the way, this shirt is a very famous shirt. This is the one that Oscar always complains about. On the back of it, I wanted to get the Sodi name. So in the back of it, it had Sodi like in massive letters, like from shoulder to shoulder. So it was like a big billboard, and Oscar hated it because he thought, like wherever he walked, people could see big Sodi, But he didn't know, Oscar's kind of a big guy. Like, I don't know what he's 6'3" or something. So, I couldn't afford billboards in those days. So I would say, can you stand there, Oscar? And sometimes I put a little arrow, that pointed towards our booth. And then a few years later, we hired Adil, who's another big guy. So then we had 2 billboards. But anyhow, so in 2006, I came to work one day, and there was an email, and it was an email from Microsoft. And Microsoft said they'd like us to come to Redmond and demonstrate our motion control product. So I thought, okay, cool. The enterprise customers are asking for this kind of product. We'll go there. They'll recommend our product to the customers. Great opportunity. So Oscar was there. I said, Oscar, do you want to come along with me? So we went to Redmond. It was a big boardroom. There's like 35 people in there, and it was a long demo, about 4 hours, 3-4 hours. And they asked us a million questions, right? So on the way back to the airport, me and Oscar are talking, and we said, yeah, they're going to work with us. That went pretty good. And we were like, yeah. So we went back to Toronto. Next morning, I go to work, and there's another email from Microsoft, and it says, thanks for the demo. We're going to buy your company. So I called the guy up, and I said, I said, okay, yeah. So he says, yeah. He says, great news, Carl. You know, your wildest dreams to come true. All you entrepreneurs, this is what you're living for. This is what you do it, you know, to sell out to a big company like Microsoft. We want to buy your company, this opportunity of lifetime. And he says, and then he says at the end, he says, you know, but if you don't sell, you know, I just want you to consider the consequences, right? We're Microsoft. We have, you know, tons of money. You know, we can just put together a team. We know everything your product does, you know, and we'll build a better product. And, you know, your product will be done then, you know. So take the opportunity, take the money, man. You know, he says, I wish I was in your shoes, right? This is so I said, okay, let me think about it. For some reason, I wasn't as excited as I probably everybody was expecting me to be. So I went home that week, and that weekend I asked a lot of people, a lot of friends, a lot of family. I said, you know, what should I do? And everybody told me the same thing. Yeah, if you don't take the money, you're an idiot, right? So, you know, and I was struggling with it. So I said, I must be an idiot, right? And then I talked to my wife, and she said, you know, you just consider why you started this in the first place, right? Just consider what makes you happy, and you know, that's something to think about, right? And I thought about it, and I thought, the reason I started this, I wanted to really build some cool software. I wanted to have fun at what I was doing. I wanted to work at something I really liked, and I was actually doing that. We were doing that, right? And so that helped to clear my mind a little bit. And I went back on Monday, and I told the Microsoft guy, I'm not interested. And he says, you know, we're just going to go and we're going to build a product just like yours. We'll form a team. And he says, that's what you're going to do. I said, okay, fine, whatever. And they did. And they built a product, they built a team, and they called, the product name was SCCMDM, right? Stood for something, but we affectionately named it as ScumDum. But a few years later, that product didn't do very well. Microsoft shut it down, and you know, the guys who've been here a while will probably remember that product. So now Moby Control started to gain the rounds around the world. A lot of people started to hear about it, and we started to get calls from around the world. So in 2007, we got a call from Japan, from Tokyo, and there's a company called POL, and they said, we want to sell your product in Japan. We can be there in a couple of weeks. So they came down to Mississauga. There's two guys. One guy's Shinya, and the other guy's name was Ken. And Shinya could not speak a lick of English, and Ken could speak a couple of licks. So anyhow, what they told us is they wanted to sell our product exclusively in Japan. They want sole exclusive access to Japanese market, so they wouldn't have any competitors. And we weren't selling in Japan. We had no connection with Japan. So we said, yeah, sure. You know, they went back. A couple of weeks later, Shinya came back, and he stayed in Canada for a few months. I don't know, about 3 months, and he completely helped us localize into Japanese, right? We accomplished a couple of things. You know, we had a localized product, the first localization. So now we had English and Japanese. And we also taught Shinya a couple of words. He could say beer. He could say bar, you know. So we sent him back to Japan with a couple of really key, the most important words in the English language, right? So from there, we got a call in 2009. We got a call from the UK. There's a gentleman there by the name of Nasser Hussain. He had seen our product. He said, I want to sell your product in the UK. So we hired Nasser on board, and he started selling the UK. And from there, it spread through all of Europe, into the Middle East and Africa. And on the left, you're going to see, on the left, you can see what is our current UK headquarters in Birmingham. We also got a call from another gentleman from Australia, in Melbourne, Australia. His name was Gareth Phillips. And Gareth also wanted to sell a product in Australia. So he started to sell it in Australia, and from there into a lot of the countries in the East, Malaysia, Singapore, Indonesia, etc. On the right is our current APAC headquarters in Melbourne, Australia. Now, in 2010, I went home one day, and you guys talk about 9 to 5 days. In those days, it was 9 to 9 days. Life's changed. 5 days a week at the office. And so I was done. I went home, and I was kind of chilling on the couch, I was falling asleep. And then suddenly my phone rings, and I pick up the phone, and on the phone is our then COO. His name is Ron Hassanwala. And Ron's saying, "Great news, Carl, we won this award, Microsoft Worldwide Partner of the Year in the mobility category. It's a big deal." And I said, okay, great, Ron. So I said, awesome. He says, "There's one trick though, the presentation is tomorrow in Boston, tomorrow morning." And I'm like, okay, we'll just catch a flight. What's the big deal? So he got up. I said, go see if we have. So he went. 10 minutes later, he calls like, "Carl, there's no flights. We can't get there in time." So I knew where this was going. I said, "Okay, Ron, how long before you can get here?" So he says, "I'll be there in 15 minutes." So 15 minutes, Ron's at my house. We jump in the car and we're driving to Boston, right? And I don't know what time. It's like 10 o'clock or something, right? At night or something, right? And we have to be there. And Ron has this GPS with him that works 50% of the time and doesn't work 50% of the time. So it's the early days, right? So GPS is much better today. Anyhow, so he's gunning it through the US. He says, Ron was Mr. Math, right? Everything's calculated to the second, right? He says, we should be here at this time and this along the journey. So he says, okay, we're 5 minutes behind. And then he's gunning it through God knows where in the United States, pitch black on some dirt road, and the car is like just like this, right? And after a while, I couldn't take it, right? So I was like, okay, Ron, I'm going to close my eyes, and then one of two things is going to happen when I wake up, right? So anyhow, so I went to sleep, and then sometime later, I can feel this bright light. I'm like, oh my God, right? And then I opened my eyes and I realized it was sunlight, right? So we got there, and he says, "Great news, Carl. We are 10 minutes away. We made it, right?" And I said, "Okay, great, Ron." So Ron had missed one little detail in his calculation, and that is Monday morning rush hour traffic in Boston. We were stuck. We were like that 10 minutes or 15 minutes, whatever it was, it took us an hour and a half. So we completely missed the award presentation. Anyhow, so we got there and we talked to the guys and we picked up our award. And there was this, but they had, for the top developers, Microsoft had scheduled a special private lunch. And that private lunch was with this gentleman, Steve Ballmer. Steve Ballmer, I don't know if you know, Bill Gates stepped aside, and then he put Steve Ballmer in charge. Steve Ballmer was the then CEO of Microsoft, right? And so we were invited to this lunch. We go to this lunch. There's just two kind of round tables. And then it's us, me and Ron, and maybe two other development companies at this table, and there's another table, right? So there's like 6 top mobility development companies in the world there. And Steve says, "Great, congratulations." If you know Steve, he's a very animated guy, right? So I have nowhere near his energy. It's kind of like Ryan Sequeira. So he does this thing. He says, "Great, congratulations, guys." And he goes, and then he says, "I have a bit of bad news for you." And he says, Windows Mobile, that operating system you've done all this work on, it's like we end up lifing it. And we're like, okay, you don't even know what to say to that. And he said, but we have this another operating system. It's called Windows Phone, and that's just redevelop your software for Windows Phone, right? And so we all looked at each other, and we start talking, these developers, and all of us pretty much on that day decided none of us are going to develop for Windows Phone. And the reason was pretty simple. Windows Phone hadn't been released on the market. They were going to release it, and there's not even one device on the market that supported it yet. And we thought, and Android had come out 2 years later, Android 1.0. So we all decided we're going to go back. And this, I just want to understand, this is like very shocking news, right? We had been working from 2001 to 2010, developing our technology, and in one stroke, Microsoft saying, everything you do is going to be useless. It's thrown in the toilet, it's garbage, right? And so it was kind of a big shock. And we went back to Toronto, Mississauga, knowing that we're going to redevelop for Android. Now, when we got back, there's one problem. It was very tough at that time to find good talent in the Canadian market. Secondly, there were no Android developers on the Canadian market, right? Android is new. And so we had a problem. So we said, we need really good talent. We can't find it on the Canadian market. So we made a strategic decision. So we went to the Ukraine and we said, we're going to find developers in the Ukraine. And so we partnered with a company who had connections there. By the way, any of our Ukrainian developers here? No? They're in the other room? Come on, Ukrainian guys. Yeah. So Ukrainian guys are very shy. So anyhow, so we went to the Ukraine and we brought a whole bunch of really top-notch Ukrainian developers. We brought their families. And we created a program to help them settle here in Canada. And we were scared that they wouldn't like Canada, so they'd stay a few months and leave. So we tried really hard. We found out where the Ukrainian community centers were, and we did a lot of things to kind of try to help them settle in those early days. And with their help, we actually added support for Android, and today we are considered #1 in the world for managing Android developers. So thank you. So today we support over 400 manufacturers from around the world, who make Android devices. Those would be like Samsung, Lenovo, Zebra, Honeywell, Panasonic, and many others. So around this time in 2013, our products were getting popular. We needed to really expand, and we needed to do more. We needed to provide support for Asia in their time zone, and we needed more talent, right? So we said, let's go to India, right? So at least I decided, let's do it in India. And so I met this guy somewhere in my travels, and he was based in California, and he had helped another company set up an Indian operation. So I was working with this guy in California, and every now and then I would be talking to him every day on the phone. I'd come out from my office, and I'd be chit-chatting with the people around me about this thing. But little did I know there was somebody who was kind of listening in all of my conversations, right? Sort of a eavesdropper, right? And that guy was Adil Khan. So you guys know Adil Khan, right? He's that guy right there. So one day, Adil comes to my office, and he closes the door behind, goes, I'm here. I'm like, I can see you, man. Like, what's the problem? He goes, I'm from India. He goes, I can help you set up this office in India. Why are you going to this guy in California? So he was kind of heated and upset. And I said, okay, chill, man, relax. And so I started talking to Adil, and together we actually opened our first office in Gurgaon in India, and then we moved to our second office. So this is the reception for our office in Gurgaon. And from there, we added 2 other offices. We added offices in the south of India, so we have 2 offices in the same building in Kochi in the south of India. And today we have over 700 employees in India, and they do everything from development to sales, support, finance, etc. So at some point, as we were growing, we thought, we don't have salespeople around the world. How can we get our product around the world? And there was these companies who were approaching us and said, we have this sales team around the world. We have a support organization around the world. Why didn't you white label your product, and we will sell it as our brand? And we created a bunch of white labels. So these are 2 of them. So we created a product that had the Honeywell brand on it and was called Remote Mastermind. And we created another product called Mobile Control Center, and for this company called Scientific Logic. So for those of you who don't know Scientific Logic, this company now is inside Zebra. It got bought first by Symbol, and then Zebra bought Symbol, right? So at this time, we decided that we want to spread our brand. So people were using our products, but no one had any clue who the heck Sodi was. So as much as this was getting us some revenue, we wanted to say, we want to create a global brand around the world. So we stopped the white labeling, and it also created another interesting problem, and that was we had our Mobi Control product, our brand, and then we had these brands. So our development team would work on Mobi Control, our product, then we'd take the whole team and swap and say, okay, guys, you're now working on the Honeywell product, and then we'd put in all their requirements, and then we'd swap and we'd go to the Scientific Logic. So if you think in a year, we go 1/3 of the years from one product, 1/3. The danger in this, the problem it created is we started falling behind. Other competitors started coming up and overtaking us, right? And so there's two problems it created. It created a branding problem. No one knew who the heck we were. And our development was slowing. So this time we said, okay, let's create a brand globally and let's actually drive our product full speed. And so we stopped white labeling and we just went with our own branded products. Now, in keeping with branding, we thought let's also talk more with our customers. Let's bring our customers in the same room and have those one-on-one conversations. Let's let them talk directly to our development teams, our product management teams, so they can get as much information from us and we can learn about how they're using our products. So we started to have our worldwide conferences, so where we bring all our customers and partners together and we talk to them one-on-one and we learn from them and they learn from us. So this is the first one we held. This is at the Harbour Castle Westin in Toronto. It was a great, amazing success. Customers really appreciated. We got to learn more about what they were doing, and it was a sellout. And we still have our Sodi sinks even to this day. Now in 2015, I got a message, and the message was from a gentleman by the name of Sanjay Poonen. Sanjay Poonen, in the tech world, is a very famous guy. Especially in that day. He was the then COO of VMware. And Sanjay messaged me and says, Carl, I want to talk to you. So I kind of knew what was going on, why he wanted to talk to me, because Sanjay had just architected the buying AirWatch, which was our #1 competitor in the world, right? And VMware bought AirWatch for $1.54 billion US, right? And so I knew what he wanted, right? And at that time, AirWatch was losing about $200 million a year. We have never had a losing quarter in the history of Sodi. So I felt our value would be significantly more than them. But anyhow, so I entertained the call. I talked to Sanjay after the normal pleasantries. He said, Carl, I want to buy your company. But this time, I didn't have to think about it. I just said immediately, Sanjay, thank you. We're not for sale. And now Sanjay comes from this, California, Silicon Valley kind of mentality where everybody's for sale, everything's for sale, right? And he says, Carl, that doesn't make any sense. You haven't even heard how much I want to offer. I said, Sanjay, I don't really care how much you want to offer. We're not for sale. So we ended the call, and I just went back to work. So the reason I bring this slide up is because at this point, I knew who we were. In the early days, I was trying to figure out what we were doing and where we're going. So I knew who we were, I knew what we wanted to do, and it wasn't about money. What we wanted to do is create a great company with a great culture and create great products, and that's what we wanted to do, and that was enough. So, takes me to 2016. So 2016 was kind of a rough year. It started out, our then COO, Ron Hassanwala, he decided he was going to leave the company for personal family reasons. And that same year, the guy who started our European operation, Nasser Hussain, he also decided to leave the company for personal reasons. So it was kind of a very scary moment. I had driven sales in the early days, but now we were a global organization, and I'd never driven sales at that level. And Ron ran all of sales, right? and NASA ran all the whole European, Middle East, Africa, and I had to step in and really take over this whole organization. And it was a scary moment because I knew how to drive sales and market in the early days, but global level, scary because I hadn't done that before. So anyhow, I had to take that on, and so we were all kind of very scared. And I remember I was sitting in my little office, and I had our senior leadership team around me, and these guys were in tears. There's tears coming, and I'm taking my tissue box. It's okay, yeah, grab one. and what I realized at that point is we had become a very close, tightly knit family. And when these guys leaving, you weren't just another random employee leaving, right? It was literally like family. So we were a very closely knit bunch. And I didn't know what to do, but at that time, I'm told I told them this, that guys, we'll get over this and we'll be a better company after this, right? And I'm told that motivated them a lot. What they didn't know, I was feeling just as bad inside, but I couldn't be taking the tissue myself. I had to put on the brave face and say something, right? So, but what I learned also from that was that we also had a certain culture where it wasn't me as it was in the beginning. We were a team, and people stepped up, and where there was a gap, they filled the gap. And this is, I think, a key DNA of SOTI, right? We have people who care and step up and do what we need to do. So a couple of months later, we did the next SOTI Sync in London, England. We never missed a beat. Our sales kept going up, and this was another sellout, and customers loved it, partners loved it, we just continued from there. Now, I want to draw your eyes to this picture. Does anybody recognize what I'm demonstrating here? It's LiveView. So LiveView is part of our current product. So for those of you guys who don't know, so basically we have an icon here, this red thing that shows where the device is in the picture. So there's a mobile device there, and we are marking it. And then we have what we call a time machine, and you can drag this red thing across, and the whole picture goes back to that point in time. So you can move through time and see what happened when. And so this is in 2016. We actually released that feature in our product last year. So it took us a while, 7 years later. And this is actually what it looked like. And this is me and Shosh demonstrating LiveView in Germany, in Munich last year. So you can see a few things changed. The red thing you drag, it's somewhere along the line, it became blue. So you drag the needle, and the whole map and picture updates to take you back to that point in time. So, so sometimes you have a vision, it just takes long to achieve it, but if you stick with it, you can get it done. So in those days, enterprises, when they bought enterprise software, they would listen to these analyst firms, right? And there's lots of them, like Gartner, Forrester, etc. And talking to our sales team and our customers, they said, hey, you have to work with these guys because they recommend to enterprises what's the best software in each category. And they had a category for us, right? And every year Gartner would release this magic quadrant, right? And the best products are in the leaders quadrant. So the higher you are up towards the right, the better product you are. So you can see we're down here. So we were working with these guys, and we were literally killing ourselves to get up to the top right, and we were not succeeding. And you had to pay a lot of money to do this, right? You had to go to all the Gartner trade shows. So they had one in Florida, they had one in Barcelona, Dubai, India, etc. And we were spending a ton of money because each one of their trade shows cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to attend. But to get up to the Magic Quadrant, get up there, this is one of the things you have to do. There's a yearly membership, and then you had to hire these guys, and they'd come to your office to tell you everything you're doing wrong and what you should do. And we were listening to these guys, and we were trying to, and we had a huge difference in opinion for pretty much everything, right? So they said you should focus on bring your own device and education, and we were like, why? There's no money, there's no margin in there. The margins are very low there. And they said, these are the features. And we said, we have some other features that we think the customers like. For example, we talk about our remote control technology, which all our customers loved. And it's like, who cares about the remote control? Like, this is what you should build. So we started to really follow, right? We started to listen to what they were asking us to do. And we weren't getting up to the top in the Magic Quadrant, and I think we also started to fall behind. So in 2017, I remember we went to a bar once, and we were with a bunch of these Gartner guys, and we were trying to get our account manager to love us. So we had bought him a few beers, and the guy started to talk, right? And he said, Carl, you guys spend about $1 million US a year with us. You know, your competitors are spending like over $3 million with us. Like, how can you get to the top? And I was like, of course. You know, so it was just pay to play, right? And at that time, I said, I'm not playing this game anymore. This is, first of all, unethical, and this is crazy. So we stopped. We stopped participating in any of these things, and our sales guys were like, Carl, what the hell are you doing, right? Because we won't be in their reports, and the world's going to end. And I said, just let's do this. And so we stopped, and I think we broke the Magic Quadrant, because once we left, a bunch of other companies left, and their Magic Quadrant went to hell. So. And we then went back to being that innovative company that we were. What we did what we thought was right, and we did what we thought our customers wanted. So 2017, we released, we went and we announced the SOTI1 platform. So this is what it is. You can see the products there on the right. What we did here is we looked at what the set of our products that our customers needed to really completely manage mobility. And that's what we started to build. And we felt that if we integrate our products, they could be better and offer more services than if you bought these siloed products from different companies. So each one of our products, we try to bring in functionality and bring in strategic advantage by talking to the other products. And this has become our strategy, giving our customers the core set of products. And if you think about this, it's very similar to what Microsoft and other companies have done. You know, when we say the Office suite with one word, but originally you'd buy word processor from one company and you buy a spreadsheet from another. And Microsoft tied it together and created the Office suite, which has become an industry standard. And if you create a spreadsheet, you can dump it into, you can export it to Word and et cetera. That integration allows their suite to be better than a single siloed product. And that's what we try to do with the SOTI1 platform. Now, we kept growing, and we started talking to governments around the world, and to see, you know, to expand, to really think about how do we support customers in the region, is there talent available in the region? And we talked to many governments. We talked to, for example, the French government. We talked to the government in the Netherlands. We talked to various state governments in the US. And one of the governments we were talking to is the Irish government. And the Irish government actually offered us, you know, a pretty compelling reasons to locate an office in Ireland. You know, in addition to being able to harvest, you know, European talent really easily, they talked about tax advantages as well. And today, you know, we have set up our Irish office, and a lot of our key technology is built also in Ireland. For example, in the 2025 version of SOTI X-Sight, all the indoor location technology is really coming from our Irish office. All our signal technology is coming from our Irish office. So that also has turned out to be a very strategic advantage. The Irish government was so serious about Sodi opening an office, the Prime Minister of Ireland came to Canada and he visited with only 2 Canadian companies. One of them was us and one of them was a company out of Quebec. So we definitely got a lot of love and attention from the Irish government, but that's turned out to be a pretty good success for us. Research. So even before 2020, we began to understand the importance of research. Research allows us to think into the future and to deliver unique value to our customers. So we started various research initiatives even before this point. And it's obvious, but let me recap why research is important. It allows us to bring products that have unique functionality that really no competitor in the market can deliver. And it also allows us to differentiate, right? So from the other competitors. And creates a big problem for our competitors because they have no answer to it. They can't copy. In the software industry, you do something and the next month you see your competitors copied it. The research allows us to do something that forces our competitors to stop. They can't copy it because they haven't put in those years of research. So some of our research, it takes us 7-10 years to really develop something so we can bring to the market. So 3 key research facilities we have now. We have our Sodi Aerospace team that's actually doing a lot of research on vision and those sort of things. And we have probably coming into our product soon, object recognition capabilities that we're putting into our product, courtesy of our Sodi Aerospace team. Our data science team does a lot of research, so our battery prediction technology, we have a driver behavior prediction technology, a lot of AI capabilities coming to our products coming from our data science. I have this area called Carl's Lab where I take assorted ideas and I work with small development teams and sometimes developers one-on-one on little research kind of projects that really have potential to do some good things in our products. So a couple of examples, working on a lot of triangulation research using various wireless technologies like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, passive RFID, etc. A lot of the live view capabilities, came from little ideas from doing a bunch of research. Our new network layer we are going to be adding into our dashboards is coming from that research. We have something called XD-SOC, which is our communication technology that uses to really harvest data from various apps on devices. So all this is coming from a lot of those research capabilities. So this brings us to 2023, last year. This is where we did Sodi Sync in Germany. This was a little bit of a nervous Sodi Sync for us because we hadn't done Sodi Sync in a while. It was the first one after COVID. We were a little worried. Combination of will people show up, because we were scared of gathering. And we hadn't done a show in a while. We said, will we be able to pull it off? But it went off really well received by our customers. They were super excited to see us. It was, and all the technology really we had built in this gap of good communication during COVID. I always find it interesting when we go to these shows. I've never met many of these people, right? And a lot of us haven't met these people, but it always feels like it's like you're meeting long lost family because they feel connected to this company through our technology. They use our technology, they sell our technology, and quite often have been selling and using our technology for many years. So when we show up, it's like, there's a certain warmth and friendliness there because of their great respect they have for everything we do and our technology. Now, I've been asked to talk. Good news, really good news. My speech is almost over. Okay, I thought that would get a standing ovation. But I've been asked to talk in the last couple of minutes about our vision for the future, right? But I thought, before I get into vision, just a little understanding of who we are, right? As a company, we have a very different DNA from most companies on the market. We have no debt. We've never borrowed a penny from anyone. We haven't taken any VC funding money. We don't have to answer to shareholders. So that actually turns out to be, as crazy as those ideas were when I started, that I didn't want to do any of those things, that's turned out to be some super useful and strategic advantage for us in the market. It means we can do whatever the heck we want when we want to. If it means, you know, it's going to help us, right? If we can turn on the dime, right? Or it's harder to turn on a dime now. We have 2,000 employees, so as close to you can move that 2,000 person ship. But that's key for us, and we use it to our advantage all the time. And as much as I'll tell you a little bit about our vision, the world is changing all the time. There's new technologies, there's new hardware. So you keep, whatever I give you a vision, I'm sure by the time you get to 5 years or so, it will change. I guarantee it'll change. And that's because we react and we change to keep this company competitive. Now, if I had to summarize what's our vision for the future, you know, maybe the best word I can think of is data. So we have this capability of harvesting data from a number of our products, from SOTI Mobi Control, from SOTI X-Sight, from SOTI Snap, from SOTI Connect, Identity, Pulse, and also from external sources like data we get from ServiceNow, Salesforce, and even from open APIs where we can pull and harvest this data, and also customer data. So we get access to a lot of data, and the magic is going to be for us to really pull the nuggets of information and present it to our customers in unique and different ways using modern technologies like AI, machine learning, mathematics, mathematical algorithms that maybe is coming out of our data science team as an example, and computer science. Like there's a lot of computer science algorithms that we use, and we just tune them a little bit, right? And we can, with this, we can harvest this data and give our customers these unique insights to really help them understand problems before they become problems and understand where their business is going, so they can do that early tuning to really get their business running in the right direction, as much as it is to really give them the insights, to present it in meaningful, creative ways, you know, with some of our OI dashboards we have, and through technologies like you see here, like LiveView, to really allow them to visualize, right? So in the old days, we presented data to enterprise customers in rows and columns. Today, the world is different. If you want to be a top-notch customer, you have to be able to visualize this technology in unique and interesting ways. And that's what we're doing, right? And you're looking at X-Sight 2025, which is going to be released in October. And the market reaction to our technology has been amazing, right? We're obviously doing something different and unique from any other company in our space, in the tech space, and you know, we are seeing the results of that. So that's where we're going. That's about as much of a vision I can do in the 2 minutes I was allotted to give you the vision. But good news for SOTI employees, I'm going to be doing an unplugged. They're going to give me a whole 2 hours to talk about vision. So SOTI employees, come to that, and we'll talk some more. There's that good-looking guy again. So, you know, it's been a very long journey for us to get from 2001 to here. But the interesting thing that I've learned along this journey is that, well, first of all, we've achieved a lot on this journey. Like, we really achieved a lot. And it has not been an easy journey by any stretch of the imagination. It's been a difficult journey. It's taken a lot of hard work, passion, grit, late nights, and we have a lot of the bumps and bruises from that journey, you know, to prove it, right? But the most interesting thing for me is the culture of this company, that no matter what happens, you know, people step up to really get the job done, and we continue to persevere on that journey and get to our destination. Now, many people would say it's my job, it's the job of the CEO to motivate you guys. But I'm going to turn that around. I'm going to say, during sort of the most difficult path of this journey, it's you guys who actually have inspired me. So thank you for that. And thank you for all your efforts, you know, that, and through your efforts that we have this amazing new HQ from where to plan, you know, our next adventures as we continue along this journey together. Now, let me see. You know what? Time to celebrate. Thank you very much.
Standing ovation. Ladies and gentlemen, Carl Rodriguez. So this concludes our formal portion of the event. Now, like Carl said, it's time to eat, drink, and be merry. So with that being said, let the celebration begin.
There you have it, the inside story of SOTI from SOTI's CEO himself. Want to join our team? Visit soti.net/careers to learn more. And like and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more exclusive content.